Hi, I'm Mike J., the world's most innovative coach. In this next 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the context of LeaderWARE Flow. I still remember the day that I was sitting in on a call with Dr. Susanne Cook-Greuter, who was discussing Jane Loevinger's ego complexity and her subsequent PhD at Harvard. I had bumped into Elliot Jack's work via a colleague who sent me Requisite Organization, or what is referred to as the Bible by the Jacks folks, after having just authored my first book, Coach to the Bottom Line, in 1998. Those two models, along with Robert Kegan's book, The Evolving Self, and a not well-known model outside of academia, the model of hierarchical complexity, all seem to point in a similar direction. But first, let me orient you to my work. I started calling myself a professional business coach in 1988. After I decided that leadership coaching was a way to express myself. You know, they say leaders are not born, they are made, but some of us are just born to lead. Even if it's badly, we seem to make it up as we go. Later on, as I studied more about myself and others, I found that leadership can easily be confused with initiation, which is a trait, and aggravated by other traits like expedience or extroversion. Now, having been the victim of my own arrogance long enough, I began to get the idea that what we believe now may not always be what we believe later, and I started to ask why we change or evolve the way we think. After a decade of fits and starts in business coaching, it started to dawn on me that number one, people don't want to change unless they have to, and two, trying to get them to change leads to diminishing returns. It's kind of like in Nebraska, we say it's like teaching a pig to sing. It doesn't work and it annoys the pig. Unfortunately, or fortunately, if you can see that side of the sword, people change when they have to, even when the have to is an internal change clock that is ticking, which is present in some of us, not all of us. So the convergence of meeting with diminishing returns along with the emergence of change models in my own life sowed the seeds of LeaderWARE Flow, which you are going to see written as LeaderWARE with the @ sign for the A in the future to denote the system underlying this leader work. Now, I need to briefly mention the @flow piece because we are dropping the literal reference at this point as something like an operating system. As I write this context here in PowerPoint, Windows 10 makes it possible in the background, but I don't interact with Windows 10. It runs as the operating system completely out of my consciousness. The same happens at Flow. Flow is a social operating system, or SOS for short, designed to alleviate our need for growth and consumption, or at least the focus on growth and consumption, which are presently operating in the background of society now, which I refer to as blank slate, or the current SOS @VS. @flow is designed to move us from the equation of success equals happiness at blank slate to happiness equals success, an inverse of wants and needs, decreasing the need for consumption to give us time to figure things out, and that's hopefully. I wrote a book at Flow. If you're interested in the operating system which LeaderWARE runs on, however, my focus now is helping you to understand LeaderWARE, so let's get to it now without further ado. LeaderWARE is a combinatorial approach to participating in the evolution of personal change. The reason for change is manufactured daily as we pursue problems which are created by change. While I'm not a PhD, I conduct my own scholarly primary and secondary research on leader development. When I consulted Dr. Fred Luthens in Nebraska about a PhD, he told me just go out and do it. Forget about a PhD, it's never going to work for me. My global data set from that research has indicated leaders develop unevenly through different domains. While you can expect some domain-independent capability, most capability lies subject to particular domains. Now, the asterisk on most is that we do have cross-domain capability, and there are a few of us that are trying to find that holy grail. but most people's capability really lies within particular domains of talent. We'll talk more about that. The second thing I found was that while self-awareness was key, the amount of it is hardwired into each of us at different levels, like running fast, being tall, speaking well, or even fine motor control. And the third takeaway is that self-knowledge is a precursor to developing more complex levels, because we can't just depend on conditions to provide the tension without suffering serious setbacks. In other words, we're all being developed by existence, but there are other options regarding development that we can participate in as developers developing. As I coached leaders around the world, whether it was oligarchs in Russia, a central banker in Indonesia, or executives in North America, I saw one thing emerge. You can't get there from here. The next level of development, while integrating the level less complex, is a whole other way of seeing the world, and you have to be able to let go of what got you here to get there. The first question that comes to mind is, why get more complex anyway? Well, that's a good place to begin for sure, and let me tell you this: if you don't need to get more complex, then don't. There is an emerging unconscious tension, at least in the USA anyway, especially with our PC world, that being more complex is the way to go. That's often described as being more holistic or more integral. And while the tension from complexity is there, it might be a good idea to resist it if you can. More about this later in the program. Some research has shown that people who are more complex are not happier, they're just more complex. So the idea of gaining altitude for flying's sake is actually carrying a virus that can make your life real airsick if you're not careful. Also, complexity is an open system, which means that being more complex is only going to create more complex problems. So there is no ordained advantage in attaining complexity, so be careful what you wish for. With those disclaimers in place, there is a place for a program that leads the way with a toolkit required to exercise a leader's inborn rights to become more complex. And we will need them to lead us into this complex future. This same toolkit can be used by coaches, managers, consultants, guides, mentors, teachers, parents, and helpers to understand what is happening in the process of leader development or people development, even as it occurs in all ages and in all cultures. Let me leave you with the outline of LeaderWARE and the 7 dynamics that constitute the metasystem. Over time, I've distilled the following as necessary, but not sufficient guides to the self-knowledge yields greater self-awareness equation. In the program, I'll dive more deeply into these 7 dynamics and reveal the tools contained in each one that are interwoven in each other through the process of LeaderWARE. Here they are: capability, bias, style, level, role, values, and system. These are the primes. They just don't get any more prime than this. Each of the 7 is a category which can be further differentiated, coordinated, and then integrated using the components of the others. While it may seem cumbersome to have so many elements, it's like a periodic chart of chemicals that when combined produce different compounds, and in order to understand what elements are involved in each compound as they are combined through those conditions that cause them to combine, in other words, conditionally. It's just complex, and that is what we are attempting to resolve. If you're ready to play a different game altogether in your helping, guiding, and scaffolding of life, work, play, relationships, and contribution, LeaderWARE may be your huckleberry. In the next video, I'll explain what you can do to make a bold commitment with LeaderWARE. If you're not a free member already, please click the link below to get access to my papers, videos, and blog. Thanks for your time and attention.